In the Arizona desert, Linda Rawls is a thorn in the side of President Donald Trump. A white suburban woman, she belongs to the very group that helped him win in 2016, but that is now abandoning him. She can look back at a life dedicated to the Republican Party. She ran for Congress in 1994, but her assessment of Trump is devastating.
He has become worse than we could have ever imagined. No one really realized that he was psychologically disturbed. I don't think people realized how much he really would not follow the Constitution and how much he would change the whole party from the party of freedom into a party that worships dictators and destroys the rule of law.
For decades, Arizona used to be a Republican stronghold, but it is now becoming a battleground. And the spread of the coronavirus is playing a crucial role. At Phoenix's largest testing site, every 1 in 4 tests is coming back positive. Voters in Arizona are turning away from Trump for many reasons, but one can be found right here behind me at the South Mountain Community College. It's an hours-long wait to get tested here, with the results coming in a week after that at best. And experts say this is exactly where the United States is failing in stopping the spread of the virus. Here, on the outskirts of Phoenix, where many voted Trump in 2016, people are now frustrated at the government's response to the pandemic.
I certainly don't think he protected the United States, taking measures that he needed to take, and informing the American public and giving guidance properly. So yeah, he did a disservice to the United States.
He has the power to make it happen, but I'm seeing worried about other things than this, what he should be.
I think they should have did this in January, yes. When they really knew, but Trump would not put it in action. He said, oh, it'll just go away. No, it don't just vanish, stuff like that.
Linda Rawls still holds Republican values, but she plans to vote Democrat this year, and she might not be the only one here in Arizona.
Well, for more on the detailed political picture in Arizona, I'm now joined from Phoenix by Mike Noble. He's the Chief of Research and Managing Partner of OH Predictive Insights, an opinion polling company. Welcome to the day, Mike. Arizona is traditionally a safe state for a Republican candidate. You've just published your latest poll on the Trump-Biden battle. What did you find?
Well, we found that when you said Arizona is a tough hill to climb for Democrats, the last time a Democrat carried Arizona in the presidential contest was actually Bill Clinton back in 1996. So Arizona has been a very reliable state. However, right now, Trump is currently down 5 points to the challenger, Democrat Joe Biden. 49% for Joe Biden, 44% for Donald Trump, and with very few undecided.
Do we know why voters there are deserting Trump?
100%. So Trump carried Arizona back in the 2016 elections by 3.5 points. What's interesting about that, Arizona has been a long Republican state, as we kind of discussed, and which, compared to all the other Republicans that won previously, he won by the smallest margin. And so now we saw it in the 2018 midterm elections, what the shift was among suburban voters, and specifically among college-educated whites, the ones that are higher educated, college educated or higher, voted, are turning against Trump, but also the ones that it's Trump's base are those that don't have a college education or high school or less. So those are the big shifts, was these suburban demographics and independent voters.
Well, in our report, we heard from Linda Rawls. She's a lifelong Republican, deserting him. Is there anything Trump's campaign can do to win people like her back?
Well, I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I'll tell you why. Is that, remember, Arizona is home of Maverick John McCain. He's a legend, but also he was a more moderate Republican in a sense. But we know before his passing is that he definitely got in some tiffs with Donald Trump. Trump said some disparaging things about it. And so when you look at among moderate Republican voters, Trump, in the era of Trump, is essentially started to alienate that part of the base. And so it's not a surprise to hear that, but also knowing that You need to carry your voters if you're going to hope to plan to win on Election Day.
Yeah, but also you need people actually to go and vote. Any election depends on people turning out. Are people in Arizona enthusiastic?
Well, it's interesting you ask that, because when you look at the enthusiasm, the one advantage, so currently on all the key variables and the key numbers in the race, Trump is not doing well. However, the one bright spot for his campaign was that he had about a 10-point advantage over Joe Biden in the enthusiasm category. However, with COVID hitting recently, that has squandered that enthusiasm gap, and they're essentially they're tied.
So then there's the coronavirus pandemic, which is starting to hit states like Arizona very hard right now. Is the if the virus weren't there, would things be looking better for Donald Trump?
100%, because Arizona knows not only is at the forefront of coronavirus infections, is definitely a hotbed issue currently here in the desert. And with the virus, we've seen there's a direct correlation among elected officials, whether it's our governor or it's the president. When there are high spikes, increases of coronavirus, that is a negative impact on those elected officials' approval. And with it rampaging currently here in Arizona, you see that Trump, that has hurt him on the handling of the coronavirus.
Mike Noble from OH Predictive Insights polling in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you for this insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, if only the virus wasn't there. But it is. It very much is, and no one knows that better than our next guest. Aliyah Garcia is a so-called traveling nurse. That means she's flying around the US on crisis assignments to coronavirus hotspots. Currently working in Phoenix, but she was in New York when the city was hit by the virus. Aliyah, in a previous interview, you've said, and that's pretty much impressed me, I've seen a lot of death. How are you and your colleagues coping at the moment?
We're doing the best we can. I think the number one thing is we know that in order to beat this virus, we all have to work together as a team, work beyond the capability that we were originally trained for in this role, and we're supporting one another the best we can.
You were caring for coronavirus patients during some of the darkest hours that New York has seen. How bad is it where you are now in comparison?
It's funny you ask, because if you would have asked me this just a few weeks ago, I was feeling much more optimistic. I felt that Arizona learned from New York's mistakes, had enough staff, had enough resources. But even in just the past few weeks, we are now running low on beds. We're understaffed. We're running low on rooms. Hospitals in Phoenix are having to transfer patients, I think, even across state lines now. So I'm starting to see a lot more similarities than differences at this point from Phoenix and New York.
It's a pretty dark picture that you're painting there. Do you think it's going to get worse there in Arizona?
I think it'll definitely get a lot worse before it gets better at this point.
Have you been getting a sense of whether people feel they have been misled by President Trump? What's sort of the feeling on the ground there?
I feel like at the beginning of this coronavirus, there were a lot of unknowns, but the people that were in the best position to have truthful information were our licensed health professionals. And I think we should have turned to our licensed health professionals in the beginning, Trump included, and maybe everyone would be at a much better spot. And I think it's unfortunate that there was so much conflicting information at the beginning, because I think that kind of laid the foundation of wearing a mask and social distancing now becoming a political debate, when in reality, it's a public health issue, not a political issue.
Well, we heard in our report that people are saying President Trump has failed in his duty to save and protect the lives of American citizens. How widespread is that view in Arizona?
I've only been here for 3 weeks. So most of that time has been seen from inside the walls of a hospital. But I will say there is a definite dramatic culture change as far as social distancing, wearing the mask. I don't know if that's related to the prevalence of people loyal to the Republican Party down here or not, but it is a stark difference from the sense of community, of caring for one another that I've seen in New York City versus Arizona. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of Americans, they're not going to face that hard truth of the reality of coronavirus until they or one of their loved ones are the ones in the hospital bed or on a ventilator.
Do you personally, you've been at the forefront of this fight against this virus. Do you feel that Donald Trump has done a good job in handling this crisis?
Has he done a good job? You know, to be honest, I haven't followed that much, but I think the fact that wearing a mask is now turning into a political debate versus a public health issue is showing a major problem. I think Americans should all come together to understand that this disease process does not discriminate if young, old, rich, poor, Republican, Democrat, it all affects us the same. And I don't know if it's necessarily helpful at this point to point fingers of, you know, who did what. But I think definitely in the beginning, Donald Trump should have looked to our licensed health professionals as far as guidance towards the American people, how they should have protected themselves, and maybe we'd all be in a much better spot.
Aliyah Garcia, traveling nurse in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you for finding the time for us on The Day.